London, England, south of France. And all points between, they know about your man. Konnichiwa, ladies, when I'm out in Japan. I'm a Tokyo giant like Ichiro, I am.
Welcome to another edition of the Lifestyle Design Confessions podcast. We're here to help inspire you to go for it and live the lifestyle design of your dreams. Here's Rob.
Welcome to another edition of the Lifestyle Design Confessions podcast. I'm Rob Murgatroyd from GetJetSetMoney.com. And today we have Sean Ogle of Location180.com on the line, all the way across many time zones, all the way to Thailand. So Sean, are you there?
I'm here.
Sean, first of all, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with the 12-hour time change. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's not a problem. I'm used to it by now.
Okay, so let's kind of, just by way of background, could you tell us a little bit about what led you to pack it all up and move to Thailand? Where were you from originally? And, you know, I know that you got involved with a program called the Tropical MBA, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that, but just give people a little background sort of how you wound up getting to Thailand.
Right. So basically 3 or 4 years ago, I graduated university like everybody does. I had a finance degree, got a job right out of school, and had, your typical desk job, crunchy numbers. I wore a suit and tie. I used to say I was the only person in Portland, Oregon that actually had to wear a suit and tie to work. And it took me about 6 months to realize that job sucked and that I was like, you know what, this isn't for me. My best friend was getting ready to take a world trip. He'd been saving up a bunch of money. And in February of 2009, we actually went down to Rio for Carnival. Went down there for 2 weeks, and I think I was walking down Copacabana Beach when I realized, I was like, you know what, this is what life's about. I should be able to do this on a day-to-day basis. I shouldn't have to use all my vacation time for the year to go do cool stuff like this. So as soon as I got back, I started Location 180, and I started making plans to try and break out of my job. And then in October of 2009, I finally said, you know what, I'm done. I took off. That's when the Tropical MBA came up. Dan Andrews of the Lifestyle Business Podcast read my blog and sent me an email, said, hey, I've got this opportunity for someone to come out and work with me in Southeast Asia. And one thing led to another, and first thing in January, hopped on a flight, and here I am.
So let's go back to that time. So you're sitting in your either office or house, checking your email. You get an email from Dan Andrews of the Tropical MBA, and you say, he says, why don't you come out to Thailand? So you had to have one of those moments of going, Thailand. I mean, where is Thailand? I mean, like, what was that like for you? Because the reason why I created this podcast is for people who were in your shoes back in Oregon who wants to make the jump, but they're like, how am I going to do it? How am I going to get the money to do it? I don't know if I could do it. My girlfriend, my parents, like all of that kind of stuff. So take me back a little bit to the psychology that was going on in your head at the time. Like, what were you feeling?
Well, I had all that stuff going on. I had a girlfriend at the time, and she's actually flying into Bangkok here in 2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're going to head down to Bali on Sunday, which should be fun.
So is that still a had a girlfriend, or is that now going to be a have a girlfriend, or is that to be determined?
It's probably going to be have a girlfriend.
Great.
But, it definitely was a little rocky getting from point A to point B, but
I bet.
Things are all good now. So
cool.
So anyway, that was a big concern at the time is, she knew I was unhappy with my life, and everyone around me, I think, knew I was unhappy with my job. And so finally I was like, you know what, I've got to do something. Like, whatever that ends up being, I've got to make a change. And so, the blog really helped me with that. I created a support system. I had a lot of people that were like, you know what, whatever you need, if there's anything I can do, we want to help you out. So, I didn't have a ton of money saved up. I had maybe 10 grand. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go try and start a business on my own, or I'm going to travel the world, or I'm going to do both at the same time. And that's when this opportunity for the Tropical MBA came up. And, there really, at that point, there wasn't a whole lot of like, should I do this? Should I not do this? This is pretty much like, hell yeah. Now it's like I was going to go travel. Now someone's going to pay me a little bit of money to travel. So,
well, you also had to have a bit of a trust factor because you didn't know the Tropical MBA guys, and you're flying halfway across the world with guys that you don't know. There had to be a bit of a risk on your part there.
For all I knew, they were going to take me on a boat in the middle of the ocean.
Right.
Leave me there, take what little I had. But it's one of those things where I kind of had the attitude of nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Mm-hmm.
I talked with them a lot before I left, made sure everything was as legit as I could. And sure, it could have been one big scam, but, these guys have gotten to be pretty well known through their podcast. And so I was fairly comfortable with the fact that I wasn't going to go out there and end up on a deserted island somewhere. But,
right. You didn't get any emails from like a Nigerian prince or anything. So it's
no, nothing like that.
Okay.
But, in the end, it worked out. It worked out better than I ever could have hoped. They had a legit business and they brought me on at a really high level. So not only was I getting paid to live in, one of the coolest places in the world, but I was also learning all the skills that I've been wanting to learn that I was unable to do, working a 9-to-5 finance job.
Describe for me the freedom that you were really looking for and how travel relates to it. How old are you, by the way?
25.
Okay, so for every 20, 30 something, there's sort of a different opinion of what freedom is. Usually ask a 20-year-old and he says 10 million in the bank. They don't really know what they're talking about, at that young age. But for you, it seems like you had it pretty well dialed in. You knew that included travel, so you defined what freedom meant to you. Can you kind of just describe that a little bit?
Well, I'd done quite a bit of travel growing up through the States, but it wasn't until right after I graduated college, I took the obligatory, month-long backpacking trip through Europe. And then, it really sank in when I went to Brazil. And I was like, you know what, this is cool. Like, there's so much out here. There's so much I want to see. And I know that there's a better way to be able to do it than having to, wait for my 2 weeks of vacation every year. And so that's, initially, one of the first people that I got in touch with who was doing cool stuff was Chris Gillibo. I don't know if you're familiar with his blog.
Yeah, I know Chris. He's a great guy.
So he moved to Portland, so I sent him an email and said, hey, you want to meet up for coffee? And then, I met with him probably 4 or 5 times throughout the year, when I was at various stages. And so he was someone that, really kind of gave me the encouragement to say, you know what, you can do this. It's just a matter of being willing to work towards it. So, I spent a lot of time on the blog. I spent a lot of time learning about internet marketing and, various forms of online businesses. And I basically, finally got to a point where I was like, you know what, I feel pretty comfortable with this. I'm going to take a chance and see what happens.
So let's talk about that blog. You ingeniously titled the blog Location 180. Can you explain why you came up with that title?
I don't know if it was ingenious. I think a lot of people are like, what the hell does that mean?
No, I did. I honestly, I was one of the guys that said, what did it mean, until I read deeper in your blog and found out what it meant. And that's why I thought it was ingenious, because it really is catchy.
Right. So, when I started out, it was basically just branded as Sean Ogle. And it was like, I started the blog having no idea what I wanted. I knew that I had some cool, Brazil travel stories that I could write about. I had a few, random things I could talk about, but I really was just trying to figure out what I wanted with my life. And I think the more I started writing, the more I started to realize it was the kind of location independent, working for myself, traveling, working wherever I want kinds of things that I was really passionate about. And so, once I figured out that was the direction I wanted to take it, I started thinking of a better way to brand the site. It wasn't going to work if I just kind of branded it as my name. I mean, who cares about, Sean Ogle? But so I just started thinking of, kind of creative names and thinking about what I was doing. And essentially I was trying to do a location 180, whether it was a location physically and where I was actually living, or a location with, the work I was doing or the people I was around or whatever it was. I needed to make a change. And so that's kind of what signified the blog title.